Hey everyone, glad you're here. So, here's something that's been on everyone's mind lately, the government shutdown. It's now entering its second month, and what started as a Washington standoff has turned into something much bigger. Families, seniors, and even small business owners are starting to feel the pressure. And what might surprise you is just how far these effects are reaching, even into things like food programs, healthcare, and state emergency systems. So yeah, if you've been wondering how long this can go on, or what it might mean for you or someone you care about, stick around because this situation is changing fast, and it's touching more parts of daily life than most people realize. Before we get started, let me know in the comments, how do you think this shutdown has affected people the most? I'd love to hear your thoughts. All right, so let's start with where things stand right now. The shutdown began back on October 1st, and as of today, it's officially the second longest in U.S. history. But unlike past shutdowns that mainly affected federal workers and agencies, this one has hit a critical point. The government is stopping funding the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, which most people know as food stamps. That's the first time in the program's 60-year history that payments have stopped because of political gridlock. Think about that. 42 million Americans, roughly 1 in 8 people in this country, rely on that support to eat. And you know what's really striking? This isn't just about people going hungry, though that's already happening. It's also about the entire system that depends on those benefits. Local grocery stores, food banks, and even state economies are all tied to this funding. For example, in Georgia alone, SNAP puts around $3 billion into local markets every year. When that disappears overnight, the ripple effect hits everyone: families, store owners, and even local jobs. Governors across the country have started stepping in. California's Governor Gavin Newsom has already declared a state of emergency, deploying the National Guard to help with food distribution and putting $80 million in state funds toward keeping food banks stocked. Other states like Virginia and New York are doing the same. At least 18 states have launched emergency programs just to try to fill the gap. But the reality is, state funds can't stretch as far as federal ones. They can help for a little while, but not forever. And what's adding to the frustration for a lot of people is that the USDA, the federal department that manages SNAP, actually has a small reserve fund, about $5 to $6 billion, but it's legally restricted for natural disasters. Critics are saying, well, this shutdown is basically a disaster too, just one made by politicians. A group of 25 states and D.C. have actually filed a lawsuit against the Trump administration, saying it's illegal to withhold these benefits. Their argument is that the decision is arbitrary and capricious, meaning it doesn't follow the rules set by the Administrative Procedure Act. And it's not just legal arguments. People are scared, frustrated, and angry. Videos are going viral of folks saying they don't know how they'll feed their kids. Food pantries are running out of supplies. Some are even seeing lines wrap around the block before they open. These are people who are already living on tight budgets, and now they've lost the one thing that helped them get by each month. Meanwhile, the USDA, the very agency responsible for managing this, has lost key leaders in the middle of the crisis. The head of the Food and Nutrition Service, James Miller, and Senior Advisor Babs Hoff both resigned days before SNAP's funding officially ran out. It is reported that they transferred to another department, leaving the agency without stable leadership just when millions needed answers. So now, everyone's looking to Washington. President Trump, while traveling in Asia, told reporters, "We're going to get it done." But he didn't provide details on how or when that would happen. His administration says Democrats are holding things up by refusing to pass the funding bill unless it includes healthcare extensions and nutrition aid. Democrats, on the other hand, say Republicans could reopen the government immediately if they just allowed a full vote. And that political tug-of-war has left families caught right in the middle. Now let's talk about how this shutdown is starting to hit other areas, because food stamps aren't the only thing being affected. Social Security checks are still going out since the program runs on mandatory funding. But the Social Security Administration itself has had to furlough thousands of employees, over 6,000 actually, which means a lot of services are on pause. Things like benefit verifications, fixing errors in earnings records, or replacing Medicare cards are all delayed. And even though the actual payments aren't in danger right now, this kind of slowdown can still cause real problems. Imagine someone waiting on a corrected payment or a Medicare enrollment update. Now, they're stuck waiting indefinitely because there's no staff to process it. Even though the SSA has reassured people that no one will miss a payment, and they haven't in over 90 years, the strain on workers and systems is real. The phone lines are overwhelmed, appointments are getting canceled, and local offices are facing massive backlogs. It's not collapsing, but it's definitely bending under pressure. And that brings us to another area, healthcare. Without congressional funding, the Affordable Care Act's premium subsidies are also set to expire. Those are the tax credits that help lower monthly insurance costs for about 22 million Americans. If they vanish, those premiums could more than double, from around $888 to nearly $1,900 a year on average. That's a 114% jump. And for a lot of families, that's enough to make them drop coverage entirely. One senator said, "For a million Americans will look at the price hike and say, it's too much, I'll go without health care." And honestly, that's not an exaggeration. If those subsidies lapse while open enrollment is underway, it could create chaos in the insurance market. And once people lose coverage, it can take years for them to get back in. But again, the two sides in Congress are pointing fingers. Republicans say, fix the shutdown first, then talk about subsidies. Democrats say, do both at once because people can't wait. Senate Majority Leader John Thune has said that partial bills would just be political cover, while Minority Leader Chuck Schumer argues that the government could reopen and restore benefits immediately if both sides would just sit down and negotiate. So what's next? Well, there are a few pressure points coming up. November 1st is when ACA open enrollment begins, and it's also the date many SNAP recipients were expecting their benefits. Add to that the fact that Thanksgiving is just around the corner, and this all takes on a very emotional tone. Families are already planning smaller meals or skipping travel altogether. Someone who leads a federal workers union said it best: no federal worker should have to turn to a food pantry to help prepare the family table. And that really sums up what a lot of people are feeling right now: exhaustion, frustration, and uncertainty. The thing is, we've seen shutdowns before, but this one feels different. It's testing not just the limits of government funding, but the limits of people's patience. There's anger on both sides, sure, but underneath it there's fear about what happens if this keeps going. What's interesting, though, is how some state governments have stepped up in ways that show what local leadership can do when Washington gridlocks. Virginia has found a way to fund temporary EBT payments, and Hawaii has started helping SNAP families pay for housing and utilities. It's not a long-term fix, but it's a reminder that sometimes, even when the federal system freezes, local communities still find ways to help each other. Still, experts warn that states can only do so much. The Center on Budget and Policy Priorities said something that really stuck with me. States cannot replace the scale or reach of federal programs, and they shouldn't have to. So yeah, the question everyone's asking now is, how much longer can this go on? Because the longer it does, the harder it becomes to repair. Economies don't just snap back. When people stop spending, when stores lose revenue, when local governments burn through emergency funds, that damage lingers. And even if Congress resolves this next week, the trust people have in the system, that belief that programs like SNAP or Social Security will always be there, that's already taken a hit. So if there's one thing this situation reminds us of, it's how connected everything really is. A government shutdown doesn't just close offices, it closes opportunities, it slows down payments, it puts pressure on the most vulnerable, and it tests how resilient our communities can be when leadership fails. And maybe that's the hardest part, because for millions of Americans, this isn't politics, it's personal. And if you've been affected by this or know someone who has, share your experience down below. It helps others feel less alone, and honestly, it brings awareness to what's happening beyond the headlines. So yeah, we'll keep watching how this unfolds, but what I'll say for now is this: the pain is spreading, but so is awareness. And sometimes that's the first step toward change.